Welcome to Heal Yet Podcast, where we normalize the lifelong journey of healing. In this season, we cover topics on heartbreak and healing, and giving different testimonies so you can find your best self again. I hope that you enjoy your time here and that you are able to find some things to introduce to your healing journey. Thank you so much for being here and listening. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back to Heal Yet Podcast for another episode. In this episode today, I have Miss Patrice Hartwell with me today. I'm so thankful for you accepting my invite to be here, but also to talk about such a heavy topic that, a lot of people can't even get to the point of being able to speak on something so heavy yet. So I do thank you for accepting that, and also just to be here to give someone else your testimony that can probably motivate them to, you know, take the first step of healing. So thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you for
Mhm.
having me.
All right. Well, I want you to go ahead and give my audience a quick bio and let them know a little bit about you first.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Las Vegas. The only time I left is when I went to school, and I stayed in the same state. So I've been in Las Vegas all my life. I grew up in a two-parent household, and I kind of will explain that later as to with my story and my background.
Mhm.
And right now, I'm currently just focusing on my career. I'm an accountant. I work in finance, so I'm a numbers
Ooh.
person. So that's that's my background. I enjoy doing that. And I ran track for a long time, so I was an athlete at one point in my life. I don't run anymore.
Mhm.
Don't care to, but but yeah. So that's just pretty much about me for the most part. Right now, I'm just focusing on my career and things like that. So
Okay, thank
yeah,
you. I I love Las Vegas, but I
yeah.
guess we have people who live there is like I don't even do that stuff. Like we go there just for the fun part of it.
Yeah, but it's more to do than just gambling. I know everybody has that. They just think it's just all the
Oh, I
strip and
don't.
the casinos, but that it's more to do
Yeah.
than that.
I run from the
Yeah.
casinos when I get there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so today we are getting into your journey of divorce and your what it looked like in that time, what your healing journey looked like, and also how are you still navigating through that in
hmm
your life today. Basically, what's still showing up, how you're coping with that. So right
Okay.
now, I just want you to go ahead and just share your journey with us through divorce and healing.
Okay. Well, how I got to that point, I was only married for 2 years, and at the point with my dad had passed away suddenly.
I'm
They,
sorry.
yeah, and it's okay, thank you. But once I lost my dad, suddenly it was almost like, okay, I had to figure out what I needed to do. In the midst of all of that, I would say, an toxic relationship, abusive relationship. It was more so verbal and mental than it was physical. I just knew that after my dad had passed away, it would have gotten to that point of,
Mhm.
it could have led to the physical if I probably would have stayed a little longer. Um, so not too long after my dad passed away, then that's when I went through the divorce process. And honestly, at that time, I wasn't the one that initiated it. They did. And it was more so that was their way of being controlling, being vindictive, and
Mhm.
things of that nature. And for me, I just seen it as, a blessing because
Mhm.
I was going to have to make a decision anyways. And so I just said, you know what? At that time, I was just trying to grieve my father because my dad had passed away suddenly. And my dad was a huge impact in my life. He was always present, always
Mhm.
there. I was a daddy's girl. So it
Yeah.
was very tough for me. So to have to deal with that and dealing with being in a relationship with someone who was wanted it to be all about them when it wasn't, then it
No.
became okay, well, since the
Mhm.
attention is no longer on me, then I don't need you no longer in my life. And so I had to pick and choose because going through a divorce is a form of death.
Yes.
You grieve it, and so I
Yes.
had to choose. Do I need to, because I couldn't do both of them at the same time. If I would have did it, I wouldn't, you know, it, I don't know where I would be mentally, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I decided to grieve my father because I know I couldn't get my dad back, but I could get another husband. So I said, let me just
I
grieve
like
this
that.
process. And, and then once I move forward, or I just decided to just kind of block that situation, my divorce, out of my mind. So fast forward, still to this day, grieving my father. Um, I have gone to therapy and, just learning how to get through the grief process, but losing a
Mhm.
parent is difficult because it's not something you get over. You just learn how to get through it. And going through a divorce, with someone, and me and that person dated for 10 years and we only lasted for 2 in a marriage. So, go figure. Yeah, so it's just, dealing with that process. And so after that, I was just trying to get myself healed with grieving for my father. So I took a whole year off. Well, not off, but I took a year not to just date. And so I just said, let me just focus on myself and be healed, because if I do meet somebody else, then during that time, I didn't want it to be where they was trying to be, healing me when I needed to go
Yeah.
to get professional help. I couldn't expect them to
Right.
be my savior at that point. So during that time in that year, I always had a relationship with God, but it seems like I got even closer to God during that time, and I needed it because
Right.
I don't know where I would be if I didn't have God. It was a tough time just having to deal with the grief of my father. And even though I didn't want to deal with the grief of that divorce, some form of it you had to. Thankfully, well, I would say thankfully, out of that situation, we didn't have any kids. We didn't have any of the things that kept us connected in that
Ooh,
way.
that's a
So
blessing.
when I got
Yeah.
out, I was out. So it wasn't that, oh, I had to think about my children. I had, some people are in those situations, and I
Yes.
understand. um, but I didn't have to think about that. I was just, thinking about, okay, what is my safety plan and how I'm going to get out of this. So yeah, just going through that process. I took a year to just focus on getting over my dad, and then also just trying to work on forgiving that person who I felt had hurt me. At a time where I felt like I needed them the most, it was like, oh, well, no, which I shouldn't have expected much
Mm-hmm.
anyways. But, they just decided to try to make my life even worse, because it was like, oh, well, I'll just put this on top of what you've already dealing with. You know, and with the grace of God, he gave me the strength and the courage to get through it. And to this day, I'm still dealing with some things, because I am in a relationship now, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a great boyfriend. He's very supportive, mature, emotionally, and things like that. We can talk and work through things as an adult,
Yeah.
in a mature fashion. And so I'm just thankful for that. But yeah, still with the grief with my father, I still deal with that. And the divorce, I think just the forgiveness part, that's the most difficult thing that I'm still dealing
Oh,
with
yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because I mean, I heard a lot of different things in that, because grieving, as you say, divorce is like death. You losing a person that you was with every day. You can
Hmm.
pick up the phone and call at inconvenience, and I don't know what specifics that you had with that person, but you still grow with this person. You give that person a significant time of your life, out of your life.
Right.
So that
Hmm.
becomes your norm. And to wake up
Hmm.
one day and this person decides, like, I'm done. In that
Hmm.
time and space in your life, I know that had to be a difficult time, even though you knew that that relationship probably was over or should have been over.
Yes.
It's just something
Hmm.
you was not ready to grasp at that time,
Exactly.
especially with that loss. So
Yes.
I definitely understand how you felt, and it probably felt like, I would say for me, like a stab in the back to me, like,
Hmm.
because I was, went through something similar, not divorced, but also that's all I could describe that feeling as. Wow, like
Yeah.
this person was here for me every day, decided, and this time I'm
Yeah.
done with you. And
Hmm. Hmm.
all these years and everything else, I
Yeah.
I don't care about it anymore. That's what
Hmm.
it felt. So
Yep.
I'm
Absolutely.
sorry you experienced something like that. Something to me, it is traumatic. It is
Yeah.
creates what I would say, triggers for you, and that's more
Yeah.
I want to discuss.
Mhm.
What I want to discuss later on in this episode. But I heard you say a lot about your faith and how that
Mhm.
helped you.
Yes.
When everything first happened, did you have a time in your faith where you questioned God? Because I know during the stages of grief, it is a time of denial. It is a time of blame or anger.
Mhm.
Did you find who did you direct that to in that time, or did you even spend a lot of time in that stage?
Um, I would say probably the anger. I know I felt anger, and that was more like in the beginning. And I was
Yes.
angry because, it was just dealing with, I seen how other people they still had their fathers, or
Mm-hmm.
my ex still had their father, and I was just like, well, I kind of know how they are, so why did, it was just kind of like, God, why did you take my dad away? Like he never, my dad was to himself. My dad was, chill and mellow, reserved. He didn't really get involved in the drama and things like that. So, and my dad was a man of faith as well, so he went to church faithfully.
Mm-hmm.
He, brought me and my brother and, our families up on, God and a relationship, having a relationship with God and things like that. So I still hold those principles to this day. So I was just kind of like, I wouldn't say I was too angry at God, but I was just questioning that. And then I would get angry when I would
Mm-hmm.
see, and that was in the beginning part, when I would see other people, because my dad passed away a week before Thanksgiving. So this was around the holidays. And so Thanksgiving and Christmas, I couldn't be on social media. I couldn't go to
Yeah.
family gatherings because it was just tough for me to be able to see that. Not that it was, I had anything against anybody else, but it was just, I was hurting at that time because my dad left suddenly. I didn't get a chance to say
Like,
goodbye. I didn't get a chance to, so just dealing with that. And sometimes I felt a little guilt, um, because I was like, well, if I would have left this situation sooner, would have I, would my dad still be
mm-hmm.
around? Because I was always asking God, like, should I stay in this situation? Is this for me? Is this a clear visit? Should I be here in this marriage? And God would give me signs. Now that I look back on it, He would
Mm-hmm.
give me signs, but
Yep.
I didn't really act on it because I'm the type of person too. I don't like to give up. I don't like to fail. And so I said, let me just give it everything that I have. So if it doesn't work out, at least I know I did everything I could possibly do to make this work as far as the marriage goes. Yeah. So with my dad, that part, I dealt with the guilt of that because I said, well, maybe I stressed my dad because, he was worried about me and concerned about me and my well being, which he didn't know the
Yeah.
extent of everything I had been through, but he knew of some things that I was dealing with.
And those your
And
parents know when something not right with their child. Like
yeah,
they know you're
yes.
not happy. They know.
Yeah, they know. Yeah. And so, just more so anger and guilt that, but to this day, it's just more so just missing, it was just like everything was a constant reminder, you know, of my dad. So that was a tough part.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure.
yeah, anger is one of those
I'm
things
sure.
I remember that stood out for me. But it didn't last long, thankfully. So
And that's good. That's good. I heard you mention your family. Your dad was, had a strong faith. I also heard you mention you grew up in a two-parent household.
yes.
Do you think those values, spiritually and just the you watching your family, you grow up in a two-parent household, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that played a role on you staying as long as you did and you trying to make it through the hard times in your marriage because of your faith, because of, what they say about divorce and what people feel about
Yeah.
that is what made
Mm-hmm.
you endure what you did for as long as you did?
Yeah. Now, as far as divorce, my parents would have been supporting me. Now, I didn't have it to where it was, oh, well, God hates divorce, and which He does.
Yeah.
But they knew the situation that I was in, and it was not healthy for me. So I knew that they would, if it got to that point to where either way, they would support me either way. But I never like, even though I say I live in a two-parent household, my parents had a healthy relationship. I never seen my
Yeah.
dad do anything foul or wrong to my mom, and vice versa. So me and my brother grew up in a healthy environment. And so, yes, because contemplating divorce at times or even leaving was like, okay, well, if I leave, there's nobody else that I felt could come and help me besides if I go and get professional help. Most everybody in my family was married or they were single.
Yeah.
So if I went through that, I would have been feeling like alone going through it myself. And so that's why I stayed oftentimes, because it was like just a fear of, okay, how am I going to get through this? Will I be able to get through this? And, things like that. And I didn't, want to have to deal, because I didn't know if God hates divorce. It doesn't say anything how to get through divorce in the Bible. We know that his grace is sufficient for all things that we go through,
Mhm.
but it was just, those things I was just wondering, okay, well, what happens afterwards?
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
yeah, just growing up and seeing my parents in a healthy relationship. And oftentimes I kind of thought too, my parents would question, well, we displayed this in front of our child. Why would she want to go or stay in a certain situation like that? And so, yeah, it was, yeah, that was pretty much what as far as standing on my faith and,
Yeah.
with that. But yeah, I,
Okay.
God just helped
Well,
me
that's
get
good.
through it. Yeah.
That's good. So I like that you didn't. I guess in your time you didn't really question God as much. You didn't feel like I should run away from this. You used it as a way to kind of help you get through it. Most people, to even get to that point of accepting what God has done or what He's trying to show you, they
Hmm.
can't see that.
Yeah.
And to know the relationship you had with your dad, that's a significant loss. And for you to be able to use your faith so early on is really surprising and such a blessing to be able to have that in that time. People take years to even get to that point of
Yeah.
moving forward. And as you
Hmm.
can see, it does help, but you still, of course, going to grieve that person years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Hmm.
What, in your time of healing and heartbreak, what resources, I would say, that you use, what resources or support systems did you find significant in that time? And how did they show up for you, if it was people, or how did they show up for you that you found that was helpful?
Um, well, first and foremost, God. That was the first thing I had to cry out to God, and
Yeah.
He gave me the strength to get through that, and He also blessed me with. I have friends, which they were married and things of that like that, so they could help me get through certain
Yeah.
situations, but they also couldn't really tell me how to get through it. And so, yeah, I had friends and that would be like, oh, just call me up and say, hey, let's go out and, just grab something to eat, just to kind of get me out of the house and things like that. Because for me, I just threw myself into work. That was my way of coping, or not to
Yeah.
think about things. And sometimes that's not a healthy way if you're not facing
Yeah.
what you need to face. So, yeah, my friends, um, God first and foremost, my family as well. I think my mom and my brother did their best to be there for me in the way that that they could. Um, as far as just making sure that I was good emotionally and mentally, because not only did I go through with losing my dad, but just dealing with the divorce part as well. So they understood in that regard, and then also therapy. But some of that I had to go through a few people
Yeah.
before I found one, because some of
Mhm.
them was just, it wasn't effective. And so that's another thing, I feel that's important for people. They have to find an effective therapist,
Yeah.
someone that's going to
Yes.
give you practical things to get through those situations, with trauma and
I agree.
grief.
I agree
Hmm.
because those topics are so, to me, I call them specialized. As men, the therapists have been, that's stuff that I feel that I needed to take some classes on to really learn more about. Yes, it's good. Therapists overall, they have some that's just not going to mesh with you. And you're
Right.
not going to feel like
Hmm.
y'all connecting. And my advice too is not to force that connection. It's not going to happen. I feel after
Right.
the first, you will know if this person is for you. But
Yeah.
back to the topic is finding somebody who specializes in grief, who
Mm-hmm.
can help you really process it, because you're just wasting sessions. If
Yeah.
you're 2-3 weeks in and feeling like it's not working, that's
Mm-hmm.
just not. It's a
Yeah.
waste of resources, honestly.
Sometimes, yeah,
But
sometimes I felt I'm like I'm in these sessions and I could just go and talk to my friends for, hours on end instead of,
yes, like, where are
you
your
know,
effective questions? Give me
yeah.
those questions that's pulling things out of me and helping having
Mm-hmm.
those aha moments. And I would say sometimes it don't happen in the first session because it's still rapport building,
Yeah.
but I should leave here every day with something or
Right.
feeling lighter or something.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for bringing that up, because some people force their way to being, they force it.
Yeah.
That's another job. Then it does not become therapeutic. It's more like, oh Lord,
Mm-hmm.
let me get up and go
Mm-hmm.
to therapy. And that's not what
Yeah.
that's supposed to feel like. But
Exactly. Yes.
I applaud you on even going to therapy. I have people that's still dealing with grief for years that's just not
Mm-hmm.
grasping the reasons for showing up to therapy.
Yeah.
And they don't, like you said, some see it as, I can talk to you about it. And when people tell me that, no, you can't. Like, you can,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not, it's biased. I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I'm someone that knows you. So to me, I'm going to always be biased,
Yeah.
even unintentionally. It's biased.
Mm-hmm.
So backtracking through your time of healing, did you have questions for God when, or even just out loud, like, when is this going to be over? I think that was my first question when it hit me in my
Mm-hmm.
heartbreak time, was like, I can't imagine feeling like this for
Mm-hmm.
a month or a week. I wanted it to end at that moment. For me, it
Yeah.
was times like, I'm like, how am I supposed to be a mother? How am I was just getting into my career. God, why would you
Mm-hmm.
throw this in my pet right now? You
Yeah.
just gave me this career. You just gave me all these other things. Now you're telling me I have to go through this and possibly lose all of this. Like, I got to get through this. Like, I wanted to rush through that hard part in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Would you
Yeah.
say you experienced something like that at that time?
Um, I didn't try to rush through things, but I guess, like I said, just with the grief, it's not something that you completely get over. You just kind of learn how to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
You learn about the practical things, and it's just, I have to maintain my relationship with God in a strong sense for me
Yeah.
to get through those tough times. Because another thing I learned about grief too is that oftentimes it didn't just hit on the date, or
Mm-hmm.
it was sometimes coming in month. Like when Father's Day would come, like June, I just start feeling heavy, and I'm like, why do I feel heavy? And I look at the calendar, I'm like, oh, Father's Day is right around the corner, or his
Mm-hmm.
birthday is about to come up, and things like that. It was just, you get that feeling, but you know, God, I never really, I try not to question God, not to say that it's a bad thing, but I would ask God, like, where do I go from here? Praying about
Mm-hmm. For
clear
direction.
direction on where to go forward,
Yeah.
and also wanting to learn more about myself. Why did I put myself in this situation? Because oftentimes we get, you know, it takes two, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that I'm always perfect in a situation. However, you still have to look at yourself to see why would I attract someone like this, or why would I want to
Yep.
be in a
Yep.
situation like this. So you have to learn about yourself, and then learn why you were in that situation at first to be able to get through that. And I think that was kind of a time for me as well, just learn about myself, but then also having to accept the fact that I made a mistake. I had to learn from it and move forward, and God is our father. And just like the father that, wants to do right there by their child, sometimes we have to go through things so we can learn, what not to do the next time around. um, I I don't know. I would just pray to God and just ask Him just give me clear direction on moving forward and making sure that I get with the right person, the next
Yeah.
time around. And as far as with the grief of dealing with my father, I just just pray for the strength to just get through that. Still to this day don't really know how to get over it, or to you know I just do things that around that time that I know is coming up. I just try to do things and kind of things that I enjoy doing and to kind of distract me, you know, not
Yeah,
to say I forget about my dad, but it's just, having to just, get through that. The
I learned
divorce
to
part,
live with it.
yeah. The divorce part is just, like I said, it's just still the forgiveness that you still have to, for me, that I'm still dealing with in a sense. And I say that I forgive and I move forward. And then sometimes
Hmm.
there are some things that may be a trigger that I didn't know
Yep,
was
I
that
agree.
that comes up, and sometimes it can happen. When I got into a relationship, I would start seeing that pop up sometimes, and I said, "Oh, I thought I was over this," and no, I'm not. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a reminder.
Yep,
So
yep.
yeah,
I
that's what that.
agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Forgiveness is I think the hard that I know is the hardest part. Like you want
yeah.
me to forgive somebody that did this, all of this stuff to me,
Mhm.
and I know people have been 4 or 5 years and they're still not there yet. But I
Yeah.
believe it also starts with forgiving yourself.
Yes.
And for what I feel that I blame myself for. Are
Mhm.
you are you forgiving yourself? Do you feel like you have forgave yourself for it that time in your life?
Uh,
Oh,
yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, it's hard. I feel like I forgave myself to a certain extent. Like I said, there are certain things that
mm-hmm.
I'm still learning about myself as I go along. And I'm like, yeah, I probably would have been a lot further if I didn't stay as long as I did, or if I didn't, but then I was
Yeah,
like, I could have stayed there even longer and it could have been a lot worse,
definitely.
So I have to look at where I'm at today and then just take the good, you know, over the bad. And yeah,
For
but,
me too, I agree with you say like you have forgave some things.
hmm
I try to tell myself, the time that it ended was just the right time. Even though I endured so much, like you say, red flags was there. It was times
hmm
I should have left before. But it's like,
hmm
okay, if I'd have left before, would I have learned this? Would
yeah,
God would I have been able to identify things about myself if I would have left at that point that I needed
yeah,
to heal from, that I needed to learn from, that I needed to break in my own generational curse for my children. So even though we feel all of that guilt, we know all of the signs was there. We knew it was many opportunities to leave when there was a break, when it was
right.
when I shouldn't have fought at that point.
hmm
But I'm at a point for me that I had to forgive myself for allowing so much time to pass. That was the only thing when I knew. But I wouldn't have the podcast. I wouldn't have the things that I do if I wouldn't have had that testimony. So
Right.
that was when I was able to, I would say, forgive God. Like you say, I don't say that I was upset with him, maybe for
hmm
brief, but I also know that everything that he does or allows us to endure, it always has a
Oh, that's it.
positive side to it.
Yeah. hmm
So
And that's good that you.
thank you for allowing me to be able to elaborate on that part.
Yes,
So let's get
absolutely.
into the new love, moving forward.
Yes.
And I guess the question that I feel everybody wants to know, including me, is how has that divorce, that relationship, before getting where you are now, how
hmm
did that shape your view or change your view in relationships in marriage?
Oh, well, like I said, leading up to that, well, into the relationship I'm in now, is that I wanted to make sure that I was healed to a point to where he didn't have to suffer or have to feel the backlash of what someone else had did to me, because it wouldn't be fair to
Mm-hmm.
him. And at that time, I was saying that to myself before I had met him, because I didn't, I just said I didn't want the person that is for me to have to deal with what someone else had done to
Yeah,
me. So I went through that process, like I said, therapy, and asking, God to show me, things about me that I needed to fix, because if not, then I probably would have found myself in the same situation, or, worse, doing the same things in a relationship that I should not do,
yeah,
as far as showing insecurity and things like that. So yeah, so I went through that process, and then I was at a point I was dating, not dating, but I was talking to different people, trying to get to know certain individuals, and
Yeah,
it's not easy out here dating. So
it's
I
not.
kind of,
Mm-mm.
yeah,
It's
I kind of
not.
feel for the people that talked about that now, but I think you just have to, just keep going, and it's just like anything else. You have to just try, keep trying, and you'll find the one that is for you. And so I was just asking God, like, what kind of person did He want for me? And I find myself writing those things down, praying
Yes.
about it. I was praying for him, and even when you go through certain situations, dating situations, I would just ask God, like, you know, why is this person here? Because sometimes he would say, that's a friend, or no, or
Hmm.
something. You would get certain signs and things like that, or you know, you just know if that person was the right person. And I use God a lot more in my relationships, because at first I was just making my own decisions in that
Yeah.
regard. And I needed to know, okay, God,
Same.
is this for me? Because I don't want to waste time,
Yep.
and
I
or
agree.
even find myself in the same cycle all over again. So yeah, and so I was in. I got to a point, and then I remember a month before I met my boyfriend, I went on a fast, and I was praying, and I was just like, okay, God, like I'm just giving it all to you.
Mm.
If this is for me, then it is for me, and if and I was kind of getting to that point to where I was like, if it's just meant for me to be single or
See,
not be married, then I would have been
everybody
okay
go
with
through
that.
that part.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's and just going through that, and so I went out with my friends one night, and I started not to go. And then,
Hmm.
next thing I know,
You
we went
missed
to a
your blessing.
concert. Yeah, I went to
Yep.
a concert, and me and him, we met at the concert, which he wasn't at the time he wasn't from Vegas. So we were talking, we getting to know each other. And I was like, oh, this is different. I like this. And we were talking on the phone, but he lived in New York. So we did a long distance
Mm.
relationship for like a year and a half. And yeah, it was that was different in itself too, because with me not being able to see a person all the time, we had to build up that trust.
More
And
effort.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and so having to build that trust, and then with the things that I had been through as well, I had to still kind of just put that stuff in the back of my mind. But I would, at times, getting to know him, ask certain questions to see, okay, I just want to make sure I'm not in the same situation that I was before. But no, he is a different person, totally different person, and I'm thankful for that, and just thankful that God brought somebody my way that you know is healthy, and wants a healthy relationship as well. So that was my process, like I said, dating, and it was difficult, because at times I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore, and I just wanted to focus on myself, focus on my career. But then I was like, well, if I want to be married and have kids, I have to do something. God is not going to bring them to my doorstep, but I also needed help in that process. So yeah,
Yeah.
just asking God what it is that He felt was best for me, and then using that to vet when I was dating. So yeah,
I like that. Because I did the same thing. Is more of like before I was like, I'm gonna put my feet back in this water. I'm like, nope, God, I need you involved. I
yeah,
feel like before, and I don't know if this was your situation. Do you feel like in the last one you kind of did what you wanted? Like you didn't
yeah,
include God in
hmm,
everything, and before. And I can agree with you when I say, like, I pray on every connection or
hmm,
anybody you bringing, like, God, what is this for? Because,
yeah.
relationship divorce, that kind of grief is one thing, but friendship grief is a thing too.
That's true. Yeah.
Have people in your life that has intentions,
Hmm.
and all you are is a genuine person that's trying to, your overall personality is just to be genuine to people.
Exactly.
Everyone's
Yeah.
not like that.
That's true.
So when it comes
Hmm.
down to friendships, business connections, is anything,
Yes.
I felt that now I include God. But back then, it was just me winging it. This is what I want. I wanted a husband, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't have God for that. I didn't
Hmm.
involve God in that. So
Hmm.
when I feel I want to laugh, because I'm like, when that time when it was over, I'm like, God, why would you do this to me? God probably sitting here like, I didn't
I
have
was
no
I was
parts in
telling
that.
you. Yeah. Yeah. That
I
was
was
your
trying to tell
choice.
you that this wasn't it.
Yeah.
but this was
Mhm.
your choice, and I had to
Yeah.
let you feel what this feels like when I'm not involved, when
Yes.
I'm not a
Mhm.
part of it, because I feel now in my life, God, I can feel when God's not a part of something.
Mhm.
I can
You
feel
know.
when, yes, that discernment that I always wanted, or that I
Yes.
think I always had, I just didn't listen to it, or
Mhm.
I wanted what I wanted, and that was the problem.
Yeah.
And when you said you fasted, you kind of wrote down what you wanted and what
Mhm.
you consulted with God about everything.
Mhm.
And I think that I know that that's the key to it. Everybody that I've talked to or interviewed or that I've been a part of that's married or aren't in happy relationships, it was once they included God. Even the ones
Yes.
that didn't go right, they included God in it, and they was able to have that discernment when things wasn't right, when it's time to
Right.
walk away from it, or when this time
Mhm.
has been served. Because even when God is involved, God also sometimes things don't last because He calls us
That's
to do
true.
certain things for certain times, even when you're the
Mhm.
happiest.
Yeah.
So I like that you talked about including God in this new thing and how it developed, and also how God has a way of. I like that it was long distance because mine was too. Is that
Yeah.
all of those triggers pop up? Oh my God, it
Uh-huh.
will come up, and you
Uh-huh.
gotta fight it off. Like, this is not. He didn't do this to me. That
Uh-huh.
man did, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bring this into this. But it's also a test and to show how much you have grown
Exactly.
to be able to cope with when those triggers come up.
Mhm.
So I guess did having that support from him, because I know some people have people that's like, I'm this is not my fault. I'm not gonna deal with this because you dealt with that with
Yeah.
him.
Mhm.
How was that? How supportive was he in that time for you? What did
Oh,
that
he
support look
was.
like?
Yeah, he was very, very supportive. When I told him my story and what I had been through, he knows some of the details as well, which
Mm-hmm.
I gave it time to kind of be able to just unleash, certain things or unleash things that I had actually dealt with in the relationship just so he knew. But he
Mm-hmm.
was very supportive and showing that he was there for me. In a lot of ways. And then when it came to my dad, another thing that we had in common was that he had lost his dad as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Look what
And
God would do.
yes, and then both of our fathers had passed away a year apart from each other, and then a month
Wow.
apart. So it was like his dad's was like October, my dad was November. So it was just like very close. So when we like met, when we connected
Um,
again, it was around the time his birthday is actually the day before my dad had passed away as well. So it was just all these different things, yeah, just reminders. And so he was making it, even though we were celebrating his birthday, he was also wanting to do something to remember my
oh,
dad. And I was like, oh, that's nice because a lot of people don't, what I'm saying?
no.
Some people don't
Yeah.
even text you or reach out to see how you're doing around that time. It's just like they show up to the service and you don't hear or see from them anymore, or they
Yep.
don't keep in
Yep.
contact. And so my boyfriend, he was like, oh, well, let me, he did something in remembrance of my dad, and he gave me like a little gift of reminding me of my dad and things like that. And so I was like, oh, that's nice. And so we went and ate at one of my dad's favorite restaurants, and we just did that as a way of remembering my dad. And so what I did too, I knew that his dad liked a certain candy. So when we was meeting up, I went and got the candy because I was like, I didn't want it to just be all about me. And I know that he had been dealing with the same thing. And so I, in turn, did something for him, for his dad, and we just kind of celebrated both of our dads on that day. And that was his way of like support. I felt was his way of supporting me. And we do that every year now that we're together. Even on Father's Day, we just try to do
Yeah.
stuff together to remember both of our dads. So yeah,
And it's amazing how God put people in your path that
yeah,
can relate to you in a way that you've never experienced,
yeah,
and how He uses your testimony can help him in his time. And you can
yeah,
tell when God is in the mix of things,
yeah.
because like how would have
Hmm.
You found someone that has so many things in common, that knows exactly what you feel and
Yes.
is able to meet you where you are in that time.
Mhm. Yes.
You don't find that
Yeah.
every day.
No, you don't.
So,
You don't.
mm-mm.
And a lot of people, some people will run from that. That's what I was
Yeah,
finding too. Like, I sometimes had to be mindful of not telling stuff too soon because it was almost like when I was talking about it, it was just almost like they run. It's like, oh, that's too much. In the back of their mind, it
it's
was
too
like it's
much.
too much to deal with. And thankfully, I didn't have to go through the process of being with someone like that to waste my time. Because they were there for one reason, but not for a relationship. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the
No,
dating processes.
that I hear about it and I see it, and when you go through something so heavy, you are the minute you see something wrong, it's like, nope, I'm not doing it. Even if it's
Mm-hmm.
the right person, it could be something
Yeah.
so small. It's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'd rather be by myself. When we need to stop saying that. People need to stop putting stuff in the atmosphere that they don't mean. Like
That's
you,
true.
you don't have to be by yourself. God didn't put you here to be by yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
And the minute you keep speaking that over your life, you will remain that way. So
Mm-hmm.
stop putting things out there that you truly don't want. God put us here to be with people, not to be alone. To be
Exactly.
married, to have a husband and wife, to
Yeah.
have that confidence in
Mm-hmm.
someone. So
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
that you find
Yeah.
someone. It gives people hope
Thank
that
you.
their time is coming, no matter how,
Yes.
what they say, how bad the dating pool is, how
Mm-hmm.
it's always someone looking for that out of 100 people, just like you are, or someone else is. It's someone that wants to experience that, and when you allow
Yes.
God to be in the middle of it, God gonna make you gonna feel it. You will
Yeah.
know it. Things will happen with that person. You're like, dang, this gotta be God. But
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
know God first, though. That
That's
you have
true.
to know how He speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I first thank you so much for talking about this, because even for me, it helped me. So I can only imagine
I'm
what this
good.
does for someone who is literally going through it right now, how they see it. Because some people feel like it's completely over because
Mm-hmm.
they've been with this person forever. I have,
Yeah.
especially someone who has children with someone, their healing may be a little bit more difficult, or they're reminded every time when they pick up the child, I have to do co-parenting, like this man did this to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you, having giving your testimony, empowering, even if it's one person, that
Yeah.
there is life after this, after grieving.
Yes.
The grieving of a
Absolutely.
parent and a divorce at the same time had to be
Mm-hmm.
horrible, a horrible time for you.
Yeah. And like I said,
So
it's not an easy
what
process, but I want them to have grace. Give yourself grace
yeah,
to get through things and just not, don't rush the process, but don't overlook things too. If God is giving you a sign or a blessing, I think being
mhm,
obedient is very important, and going through those types of things. So, utilize your resources and don't be afraid to do therapy. Don't be afraid to just sometimes go through things that you have to go through to get out on the other side. You know,
that's
God
true.
God is a redeemer. He's a redeemer of time. And some people stay in certain situations because, like you said, they feel like, oh, I've been here for a long time. So if I leave, it says in the word that God, he will restore unto us the years that the cankerworms, the poleworms, and locusts ate up. So he is a redeemer of time. So we have to trust and believe that, and it'll be fine.
And I read
Yep.
this in a book that I went in with. The book said that, there's people that find love. Because I think another thing is people feel they're too old. If you retire in your
Mm,
40s, I mean, retire. So if you divorce in your 40s, your 50s, your
right.
60s, it's people that's still falling in love at 70,
Yeah.
nursing
Yeah, that's
homes at
true.
90. Just
Yeah.
to experience that type of love at any place or any time in your life will be something that will still feel good at that time. We have
Mm-hmm.
to work on God's time and stop wanting to create what we want in our time and want
Yeah.
immediate results, because anything that's immediate, it doesn't last,
That's
and
true.
it often prolongs your healing journey. It costs you more time in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in taking time. I believe
Yeah.
in I don't believe in the whole thing of, because I know we talked about wasting time, but I truly believe that every piece of time that we give, something comes out of it.
That's true. Yeah.
So, as
Yeah.
we can see, at
Yeah.
any age and in any period, in any time of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I thank you so much for being a part of my show and giving your story. And even about grief and loss of your father, that was something that I didn't even know. So, thank you for sharing that with me, because I
Definitely.
know people who are grieving parents as well.
Yes.
So, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say that you are so strong. You are
Well, thank you.
very just open, and things that you didn't have to talk about. I appreciate you bringing that onto my show. So
Yes,
thank you so much for
absolutely.
being
Thank
here.
you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mhm. Also, before we end, I do
Mhm.
want you to go ahead and talk about anything that you're doing, or if you have any social media handles, books that you feel were helpful in that time, any resources for my audience that you believe would be helpful for them.
I did read a couple of books. I don't have them with me right now,
If you know the
but
names, that's fine.
yeah, but I read a book on grief that was really good. I can actually give you the name on it if you want to put it in
Yep,
the
I'll
the
put them in the.
caption.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'll send you those books. And yeah, so I read those books. If you want to link with me, I'm just like I said, I'm on social media, but I'm not really on there all the time. But
Mhm.
if you want to connect, I am my Instagram is underscore Patrice BH. B as in boy, H as in Harry. So yeah, so you can meet me there or connect with me there if you want. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm just focusing on my career right now, and I'm just
Sounds good.
enjoying life with my boyfriend. So
Aw. Thank you
yeah,
so much.